So I grew up, I have one sister younger, about 3.5 years younger than me. My mom did not work. My dad worked full-time. So I grew up in a very legalistic household. My dad was ex-military, so there was a lot of rules. Not necessarily a happy childhood, I guess, but we were provided for. No, I was always in trouble. I was that kid. Very strong-willed child I was. If it didn't make sense to me why you're telling me no, that I'm gonna call you out on it and see, what I can get away with. My dad was always working, so we just kind of had the freedom for that. But when Dad came home, it was like rules. Everybody had to be in their place. Nobody rocked the boat. Type of situation. So. Well, I'm very outgoing for sure. I never meet a stranger. So wherever there was a time to socialize or have a party, I was at it. So didn't lead the best life in that regard. I pretty much tried everything. So very adventurous, whatever was there, I did it. Yeah, I don't have a memory of it, and I feel like that is the Lord's way of protecting me. But I used to have these, what I thought were just reoccurring dreams over my lifetime where, something bad happened to me and I didn't really know what it was. It wasn't until later in life that I found out what it was. Yeah. So I used to have this dream where I was asleep on the couch and my mom was singing the song, like the ants go marching over me, and I was asleep. Well, I saw a picture one time of me asleep on the couch that was in my dream. And I just remember thinking, I don't know why that makes me feel weird. So fast forward to 40 years later, me and some of my friends were getting high and I was telling them about this dream. And I was like, it's really weird because I think my dad molested me. And I laughed because that's, it was just really one of those things you think about, but you really don't think is true. And my cousin said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you that it happened. Like, I didn't know how to bring it up. And that's how I got confirmation that it happened. So I carried all of this from the age 13. I was suicidal. I hated myself. I hated waking up every morning. I did drugs, I did, all these things to try to numb it, drank, but nothing ever worked. But I never understood why my sister lived the seemingly perfect life and never had any of these problems, and I was the one with all these problems. Suicide, from age 13, that's all I could think about. Like, I would wake up and go, I hate you, God. Like, why am I alive? Like, why am I here to live this existence? And so it was almost freedom in that moment because I knew why. So it gave me a reasoning or an understanding of why I felt that way my whole life. I remember telling my mom at some point in my life, I think I was probably in my late 20s, I'm going to kill myself today if you do not get me help. Like, it's a lot. There was voices and the shame and the condemnation that I put on myself. Like, why are you like this? Why can't you be normal? Why can't you be like other people? And so I never, I just didn't know how to get help or where to get it or why it was happening. And I would always ask myself, like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I so different? Like, what is broken in me unlike everybody else? So what I did was try to numb the pain. So anything that would keep me from being in the place that I was in that moment. So whenever I would hate myself, just anything that would numb the pain, alcohol, drugs, you name it, sleeping in other people's beds, finding love in other people's beds. I mean, there wasn't anything that was off limits. And so the dynamic, like at my house, is my parents would go out on the weekends, usually one night a week, and I would just be left, we would be left either alone or with babysitters depending on what age. And my parents had, alcohol in the house, so I would just help myself to it. So at a very young age, that became my dependency. But what I didn't realize is the more I tried to get rid of the problem, the more I drank. And so it was this vicious cycle that I never understood. I would drink it away, and then the next morning I would wake up with even more shame for doing those things. Oh, there was a lot of cutting, and that was kind of how I dealt with it. A lot of cutting and then a lot of hiding the cutting. So it was also a vicious cycle of knowing somehow what I was doing was wrong, but also knowing I needed to hide it from them because I felt like I would get in trouble. Because my dad was a very unforgiving, like, you know, this is, you know, life is hard. You just have to, you know, deal with it like everybody else. But what I noticed about me is I didn't deal with it well. Like, I didn't know how to handle it, and so my coping wasn't there. So it was just a vicious cycle of me trying to cope in my teenage years. I used to babysit for my cousins, and my parents would go out drinking with them. And one night, well, it happened several times, but one night I would be watching the kids when everybody got home and they were drunk. Like, I would be in bed asleep, and a family member would come in and wake me up and molest me, and he would say, if you tell your dad, you know, he'll blame it on you. And I knew somehow in my soul that that was the truth. So I never said anything for several years. I held it my whole adult life, because here's the weird thing. When it's sexual encounters, it gets confusing, because even though it feels good in the natural, you know it's wrong. So there was a lot of shame, but also like just turmoil. Like, I didn't know what to do. And then the enemy would hammer me with, well, you know, you didn't say anything, you went through with it, you even liked it, so why would you think that, you know, I was confused if it was right or not, if it was okay or not. My first introduction, of course, was, you know, pot. Every kid, I felt like, at least where I went to school, tried it 1 or 2 times. But so I had a friend in high school that was older than me, and so they were just like, you know, do you try acid? So I was like, what is it? You know, and then when she explained it to me, you know, you'll laugh a lot and it'll just be really fun. And so, because I always had in the back of my mind, I wanted to die, that kind of unknowingly, I guess, was why I said yes to it. And so pretty much for my entire junior year, I was doing it almost every weekend. The thing when you're messing with drugs and alcohol, I mean, you're just never in your right mind, and you're always having this duality of trying to, you know, kill yourself and not live and suppress everything that's happened, but also somehow try to be normal, even though that makes no sense in the natural. But so I was at a bar. We had been drinking like all night long, got into some fight with friends, and I mean, I could barely stay awake. I was so inebriated. And so I was waiting. I sat on the curb and waited for them to come out. And when they came out, they were mad at me for being out here, because supposedly they were looking for me, right? So we got into a fight, and I just said, I'm gonna walk home. This is Dallas. I live in Denton. So I just take off walking, and supposedly they came looking for me. I don't know what the real story was. It didn't matter in the end. But so I'm walking down 35 going north, and this guy stops to offer me a ride. And you know, several people had stopped to offer me a ride or asked me if I was okay, but I was nervous to get in the car with some, obviously. And so this guy comes and he pulls over on the road and backs up towards me. And I just remember thinking, like, you know, get his license plate. Like, all these things are going through my head, but I was also scared. I felt like running, but I didn't know what to do. So I just let him come up to me, and he's like, I want to give you a ride. And I was like, I don't need a ride, I'm good. He goes, no, really, I'm delivering a package. Mind you, this is like 2 in the morning, so my brain wasn't computing, like, there's no packages being, like, I'll take you to where you need to go. And so I was like, no, I'm okay, like, I'll be fine. And so I feel like I need to run in that moment, and he grabs me and forces me in the truck, and then takes off driving down the road. And there's this duality happening of, like, I've seen this on the movies, like, he's gonna kill me. Like, what do I do? So literally, I'm like taking my feet, and I'm like getting carpet fibers in my shoes, right? Because I've seen movies or whatever. I'm touching things with my hands, like putting, like, all these weird, I'm drunk though, like, I'm sobering up really quickly, but, and so he takes me to this place, and he's like, he says, I'm taking you home. And then he stops and he's like, I have to deliver this package. It's an abandoned building off 35. And when I go, he goes to like he carries a box to this thing. And so I was like, maybe he is just trying to take out, you know, all these things are going through my head. But when I try to get out the door, because I'm going to make a run for it, I can't get out. It won't unlock. Like, you know, it was like the knobs that you could screw in, they were gone. And I realized in that moment, this is probably not going to end well. But because I've had my whole life of wanting to kill myself, I thought, this is the perfect opportunity. Like, just let him, right? And so when he comes and opens the door, I try to fight him, and I can't overpower him. He's way too strong. I mean, I have a black belt in karate. It never dawned on me. I just knew that if I tried to use any of these things, like, it wouldn't work. And so I just fought him for a little bit, and he choked me, and there were several times that I almost like started to pass out. And I remember thinking, oh, this is why it's so easy, because I was at peace in that moment when I was losing air. But the thing that kept me fighting was I knew the Lord showed me, because I was like, I'm just gonna die and this is gonna be it. And the Lord showed me in that moment, your sister's birthday is tomorrow. And I did not want the rest of her life to be waking up to that birthday that was supposed to be for her, knowing that it was the day that I died. And that was the only reason that I fought my way out of it. And it was literally the grace of God that I got out of that situation. And he, after, you know, he raped me and all of those things, he tied me up with my own shoestrings, like on my stomach, hands behind my back, feet behind my back, like you would tie an animal, you know. And he threw me out into this gravel pit, and he tied my shirt around my face. And I thought he was gonna run over me. Like, I literally thought in that moment he was gonna run over me, but he didn't. And he drove away. And then it was about me getting free from this rope and running to a house that was, I don't know, 1,000 yards, mind you, naked, running 1,000 yards to this house that I'm knocking on the door at 3 a.m. going, can you call the cops? Like, and they're like, this naked girl's at the door. Like, what do we do? I mean, completely humiliating, completely traumatizing. And then when the cops come, I'm like, we were going north, but I think he's gonna go south. Like, I know he wasn't gonna take me home. He wasn't gonna deliver a package. I know he took my wallet. He took everything. Like, I think you should go back the other way where we came from. Because he was telling me some about his life or whatever. And I just felt like, and so the cop was treating me like, you know, you're not acting like a rape victim. So if you said yes to this and you decided later that you wanted to change your mind, it's still rape. And so in that moment, I was just angry because, you know, and I'm sure because I smelled like alcohol and just all these things, but there in the moment when I needed somebody that was, again, authority the most, I was let down. Well, I had this perfect idea, right? If I paint myself into a corner where I have no possessions, no job, no money, then I have no choice, right? The problem was during all this, I didn't have the courage to do it. So I thought, perfect plan, right? If I get rid of everything and spend all my money, I will have no choice. So that was, in theory, why I did all those things. You want to talk about a whole God moment from this point in my life out. Like, I never would have believed it if it didn't happen to me. But so my uncle passed away. I'm at his funeral, and this lady comes up to me. Mind you, I probably look like all kinds of a hot mess from all these things that I have done and was partaking in at the time still. She comes up to me and she says, honey, Jesus's name in the atmosphere is enough to save you. So like, and I'm like, whatever, lady, like, I don't have time for this, you know. And she's like, if you just, even if you put music on really low, at a low volume where you can't hear it, his name is enough in the atmosphere to keep the demons away. And so I'm like, again, whatever, you know. But I get home and I think, what do I have to lose? At this point, what do I have to lose? If she's right, if you're real, then let's see what happens. And so I kept music on in my house at a very low level on my Google Mini. And so I go home. I don't know how much time has passed by since the funeral and all that, but I'm in, it was a roller coaster. One day I can do this. The next day, no, I can't. And then I'm several days in that place again. And so I gave all the stuff away and gave my money away and hung a tarp around my bathtub because I didn't know who was going to find me, and I didn't want to leave them any more of a mess than that. So I hung this, I got a tarp at, Harbor Freight, hung it up, stapled it to my ceiling, and I'm like, this is it. I'm sitting in the bathtub with a shotgun in my mouth, and I'm not scared for the first time in 40 years. And that scared me. And so I'm like, all of a sudden I'm aware that this song is on the radio, and it's literally an angelic voice. I know there was some supernatural anointing tied to this. And the song says, today I was hopeless. I knew I was lost. Death and darkness was my only song. And I'm like, this is perfect. Like, this is the perfect song to end my life to, right? And so in the moment I thought, this is the Lord speaking to me, like, do it, But the next verse says, I needed someone to come set me free or rescue me. And that's what Mercy did for me. And so the voice was so angelic and so powerful that I get out of the tub unknowing that it's going to be the first day of the beginning of my life. To see who this person is, because I'd never heard a voice like that before. And I did not know in the moment that that was what the catalyst to today, where the Lord has saved my life and is, using me to help other people. This has been a 5-year journey of the Lord continually, day after day, teaching me what unconditional love looks like, the love of Jesus hanging on the cross, it doesn't matter what you've done, I will always love you. It doesn't matter what you've done, I will always fight for you. I'm always in your corner. I didn't know what that looked like. And this was the beginning of the Lord showing me what unconditional love truly looks like. I don't know if there's a word for it, but it feels like freedom. It feels like the most warmest, most tightest hug that you've ever experienced in your life. It feels like goodness. It feels like rain on a summer afternoon, like freedom. I would say to them that there is a God that loves you more than you will ever understand. There is someone that will give you freedom that you have never had. There is someone that will love you no matter what you've done, and He is waiting. He is calling you by name and saying, come into my arms and let me love you.
Revival is coming. Revival is coming.
Man, what do I want to say about the revival? I want to say, come experience the new and never before seen. Come experience the love of God. Come experience that hug I was talking about. He is good, He is faithful, and you cannot do it yourself. And I promise you, you will feel love like you have never felt. You will experience freedom like you have never experienced. You will be surrounded by people that love and don't know you but love you. You will be surrounded by people that will pray over you and call you up and call you out to be the person that God has formed you to be for such a time as this. Come and get freedom in a way that you have never experienced it before.